Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
This is Darren Doctorman.
And this is Ashley Miller.
And we are the Inglorious Treksperts.
Trekspert.
And the name of the pod, Bruce BOXLEITNER.
Star of TRON.
That's not going to work. I hate that narration. I'm a big Babylon 5 fan, but boy, that opening.
Oh my God.
The
name of the place is
the name of the place. It's trying to be like Star Trek, like have this legendary opening narration.
But it's
and
so
it's like
clunky.
the name of the place. It's so McClunky. It's
Yeah.
Babylon 5.
McClunky.
It's just so weird. It's so funny because that's a show. We've talked about this of contradictions. It did so much right, and then a couple of things it just was unfathomably wrong.
Yeah.
So
Like that pronunciation.
yeah, unfathomable.
And fathomably.
Yeah, Raleigh. Okay.
Unfathomably.
So it's interesting because, again, this is another one of our great conversations at GalaxyCon Richmond. Bruce BOXLEITNER, perhaps one of the nicest people in showbiz.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
So nice.
I mean,
So
if
great.
he was on Star Trek, he would be co-mayor of Star Trek.
That's right.
I can't
Vice
believe he's
Man.
never been on Star Trek. He was on the Orville. He was on Star Trek Adjacent,
Yeah.
but never on Star Trek.
Well.
Well, for some of the Babylon 5 fans, they're like the Snyder fans. They hate Star Trek. They feel like Babylon 5, was ripped off by Deep Space Nine, which is just crazy.
It's crazy.
Totally crazy.
It's like, oh my God, they came up with an idea of a space station in space as
No
a Star
way.
Trek show. They ripped that off. They stole that. It's like, don't you know Joe Michael Straczynski pitched them a show about a space station? How could they do that? It's like, oh my God, come on. It's like, can't we all just get along?
It's the height of hubris.
Yeah, look,
Ooh,
I what I was so happy to see too is like I wasn't sure like was Bruce just going to want to talk about Tron? Like, is he really like how much of a fan of Babylon 5 is? He might be the biggest fan of Babylon 5 there is. He's like a Babylon 5 super fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not used to that with the actors, are we? They
No.
don't really love the shows they work on.
Not all of them, no.
Well,
some of them do, but
haven't even seen the shows that they're on.
That's true.
Yeah, and Bruce, on the other hand, he loves it
Yeah.
and he remembers it. And I mean, this is, and he's so excited. And he really hopes, they do more. Like a lot of the actors, you hear them talk, oh, I hope they do more. It's because, we'll get paid.
Want to get
right?
paid. Yeah.
But he actually, like, genuinely would love there to be more Babylon 5 just because he loves it so much. I think that's great.
He's just a sweet guy. And he's so easy to talk to. He reminds me a little bit of, well, I mean, look, that entire weekend that we had with him, with Frakes, with Alan Ruck, it was just nice guy after nice guy. It was
nice guy Eddie.
And they could all talk. And Bruce was great. He was another guy that we had a 1 hour, if that, conversation with him that easily could have been 3 times that.
Yeah.
Easily.
And he was our booth mate, like next to us.
That's right. He was right next
A Bruce bit.
And he had
booth beat?
and I was so glad to hear. See, he had basically a crowd the whole convention, all 4
weekend.
days.
Yeah.
Which was fantastic because
Oh.
I really didn't know if he would.
My favorite part about that was how many of them were like the Scarecrow and Mrs. King fans. I don't even know what the hell they call themselves, like what their handle is, but man, they were devoted and they were there and they were in the audience and like cheering and clapping for Brucey. It was nuts, man. And they were coming up to his table and getting things signed and parking their scooters in front of our.
In
Well,
front of
that's
our
why it's
booth.
important. Not everything needs to be, current. Everything doesn't have to be, from the last, 5 years.
Hello, Star Trek is 60 years old.
Yeah, that's true.
That's right.
That's the rumor.
Star Trek's almost
You know,
old enough to draw.
It's
well,
funny.
actually, it is
I've
old
known
enough to draw
I've known Bruce
retirement.
for a long time. I used to interview him on the set of Babylon 5, first for Cinefantastic and later for Sci-Fi Universe. And then he was the host with Kristen Cloak of our second annual Sci-Fi Universe Awards. And he was a delight back then. He was so easy to work with and such a sweet guy.
It's these shows that we are lucky to be able to attend are so interesting to fans like us because we normally think about this stuff all the time. And that's just, that's the reason why we do the podcast, because we would be talking about this anyway. And it's so nice to connect with these people that we've known about for so long, and to find out that they are real people who are doing their job and enjoying it as much as they can. And it's so nice to see that. It's the good side of entertainment, and I'm just very enthused about it.
Well, that whole vibe, I think, really just infuses everything. When we go to GalaxyCon, I think it's the thing that strikes us again and again when we go there is that the energy that Mike Broder and his team create is an energy that makes it very easy for the actors to be comfortable, to be happy. Not every con is like that, man. Sometimes it can be incredibly impersonal,
Yeah.
and incredibly isolating, and there's no sense of community. And GalaxyCon is very different. The
cruise.
actors.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
They all talk to each
I meant to
other.
say Fran Expo. Oh, no, didn't say that.
Oh no, we didn't say anything. We're not calling anybody out. But it's just, you walk into a GalaxyCon, you know that it's different. It just is.
Yeah. No, in fact, it's because they are fans, so there's that passion that they have at GalaxyCon for the talent, and, they book people that they didn't even have expectations anyone would care about, just because they, love somebody or feel that they need to spotlight them, or honor their, importance to the genre. So that's a wonderful thing. And it was so great to see how much Bruce, also how much Tron meant to him too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How passionate he was about that, and how he did the auditions for the sequel, with the actors to, just really, really interesting stories. He has a great memory about, a lot of these experiences, and it was a real pleasure to have the chance to sit with him and talk about this. And
As you'll hear.
As you'll hear. So we're going to be back with a conversation with Bruce Boxleitner after these brief commercial messages, and then we'll be back at the end with a few more closing thoughts. So stay tuned. Hey guys, I'm Mark Altman, showrunner of Pandora, writer-producer for The Librarians, and one of the Inglorious Treksperts. And your other tour guides for today are going to be the writer for such small independent movies as X-Men First Class, Agent Cody Banks, and Thor, Ashley Edward Miller.
Hello.
And last but not least, the Trekspert, DAREN DOCHTERMAN. He's the associate producer of Star Trek: The Motion Picture Director's Edition and a concept designer on movies like Riddick and Tron Ares. It's DAREN DOCHTERMAN.
TRON legacy, actually, but
legacies.
That's okay.
I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled because we've never had a chance to sit down on stage with our next guest. He's in the brilliant 1982 classic, Tron, Babylon 5. He's played the president in 900 things, including the Orville. And we're so thrilled to welcome him, Mr. Bruce Boxleitner. There you go.
I've been the president of everything.
You have. Now, I think there's something, before we go on with the panel, we want to clear up. This is very important. We want you to let you know we're team Bring 'Em Back Alive, not Tales from the Gold Monkey. Good. Okay?
Or Stephen Collins. Anyway, thank you. Frank Buck.
Yeah, and it's not even a Stephen Collins thing. It's more just at the time. This
Don
was
Belisario.
the great Don Belisario.
The great Don Belisario.
Who created NCIS and was a mentor.
Magnum PI and a number of things. He called me, actually, to ask me to do this, but I had a meeting, my people and I had a meeting with the head of CBS television, and on a handshake, when they still honored things like that, on a handshake I promised to do, if they were going to do a series, we would do it with CBS. And that was it. Don Belisario was NBC, I think. And that was it. And he called, and then he cussed me out. I'm standing in my kitchen being told by one of the biggest producers in television that I would never work again because I didn't do Tales of, it was not called the Gold Monkey, it was called Tales of the Brass Monkey.
Brass monkey. Okay.
Colder than the
Beastie
balls
Boys.
on a brass monkey. Oh, I said it. And I'm wearing a Disney coat, too. Oh. Anyway, but...
In a sense, we all are.
Well, it was interesting because that was in the wake of the success of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Everybody wanted Raiders for television.
Well, you guys are, you know, I mean, that was the trends in television where if something was a big, literally culture changer movie, or a series of movies like Star Wars, what did we have after that?
Galactica and Buck
And so
Rogers.
on and so forth.
Yeah, but who would try to do Star Wars on television? It just wouldn't work.
Well, it really didn't, did it? I mean, but no, yeah. So NBC had one. They already all had scripts ready to go about some kind of a adventure in the Far East or something like that. An Indiana Jones type guy. So, and that's what I did, and struggled for 13, 14, 15, 16 episodes. I don't know. And every day I was begging this guy Bud Grant at CBS, just give us one more show, one more. I was up against the 10th season of Happy Days,
Right.
which was a juggernaut. Was it not? I mean, it was a cultural
Well, they had
icon.
jumped the shark at that point.
Huh?
They had jumped the shark
Yes,
at that
they
point,
had.
literally.
Yes, yeah. And I think Joni loves Chachi and all that sort of thing. And in the days of 3 networks,
Yeah.
number 2 didn't count anymore.
Can we put 15
You had
or
to be number 1 that night, and you weren't.
So can we put 15 or 16 episodes into context for some of the younger members of our
Yeah.
audience? Because
Yeah.
I'm sure for some of you, that sounds like the longest running show on Netflix.
Yes, it does.
But at that time, 15
Yeah.
or 16 episodes wasn't even a full season order.
No, it was not. I was trying for 22. That was the average, and you wanted to do 22 seasons for 5 years. 22 episodes a season for 5 years gives you 100 episodes, and that was the package they would sell for syndication. But all that's changed. We don't have syndication and things like that now. So,
But at the time, you stayed in the CBS family, and you had much more success with the Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
yes, we did. Yeah,
Wow, look at that.
yeah, the ladies out here. Yes, and we're about to come up with our, what is it, ladies? The anniversary. We
45.
Yes, we just did a big reunion, and they come from all over the world. I swear to God, these women. It's quite an interesting experience. It's
What do they call
they
that?
take over a whole Hilton over at LAX.
What do they call that fan group? Are they called Scaries or?
The scary, yeah. What are they? The
Scarecrow
well,
and
it's the
Mrs.
SMK girls or whatever. Scarecrow, Mrs. King.
Yeah.
Fan club worldwide. I don't know, but what I'm proud to say is that I have not, and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm crossing fingers and toes, and I know they are too. Miss Kate Jackson is going to finally join us for, I haven't seen her since 1987. The last day that she worked, because she had become ill, it's public knowledge, so she had gotten cancer. And that's why the show had to end. We were in our 4th season. We were riding very high. I know we would have gone on for at least a couple more seasons. And it was a sad year that year when that went off. So anyway, I've talked to her once in all those years. It was on the phone. She just suddenly called me out of nowhere, and it was like we were back on set again. And then I didn't hear from her again. And we'd have these reunions, celebrations, and always the rest of the cast would show up, and we did great. But we always wanted Kate to be there. She was Amanda King, you know, and this year it looks like it's going to happen June 6th and 7th it's called the Hollywood Show. It's really more of a collector's show. It's not with anime and
Yeah, it's like an autograph show.
it truly is, and it tends to have a clientele that can afford those autographs. Really, big time collectors, you know. They come with these amazing collections, and I think it's going to be. I got a feeling I'm going to have an emotional moment on there.
well,
I've
be
thought about
reunited.
it and thought about it. I've been angry with her, inside, not verbally or anything, but going, please show up. These are so many years. There's so much interest in seeing these, and whatever Kate's reasoning, I'll abide by that. And she's now wants to do it. Am I right, girls? Right? And she's actually made they've announced it, so I hope she does, and it'll be a wonderful.
She can't
evening.
sign any Charlie's Angels merchandise, only Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So-
Why is my
Do you
my
need to
Apple Watch?
Do you need to take that?
It's Kate.
Hey, Lincoln. Hey, Lincoln. Hello. I'm speaking. This is Babylon 5 right here. And it's not Abraham Lincoln. It's a friend of mine, Lincoln Logison, wonderful producer. Hello, Lincoln.
Come in.
Okay. Well, you're on stage right now in Richmond, Virginia. I'm talking to you on my Apple Watch. A lot of them are Babylon 5 fans, so they're having sort of a throwback in memory here. And I'll talk to you later, okay, man? Oh. Okay.
He said, "Call me later."
Okay, over and out. No. Take care, brother. Bye-bye.
Calling Dick Tracy.
Yeah. It started with Dick Tracy, didn't it? And I wore it on my right hand.
You're lucky it could have been Joe Straczynski.
I wish it was saying we got picked up.
Yeah.
We allow Foley. Joe doesn't like Foley.
Yeah, I know. No, what, I'll tell you, I could have done, that's the one show, it's amazing, and I thought back on it. I thought back, is this thing even working? Do I even need it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I thought back on it, and probably I could have, as long as I'm still standing and breathing, I would have loved to have kept doing that show. It was only 5 seasons, alas, and we almost didn't make that, and that's a whole adventure story in itself. But I think I would have loved to have taken that further.
People don't realize what an amazing. It just kept defying the odds. I mean, after Michael's troubles that first season, for you to come on to
Yeah.
get an actor of your caliber on that show and gave it, new life, and it's just, and the fact that it keeps, people haven't forgotten.
Right.
When
right.
it came on Max and it
Sure.
got new life. A whole
Even
new
recently,
audience.
what was it on?
Yeah, on HBO Max.
HBO Max, right, and it looked beautiful. And also, you got to remember, I had been fairly fresh out of Warner Brothers. I'd been at Warner Brothers for 6-7 years, all in total, with Babylon 5 and Scarecrow immediately, and then some movies I did for them. But so that was kind of my lot. I loved the Warner Brothers a lot, and we didn't shoot at Warner Brothers Babylon 5. We shot in an old hot tub factory out in North Hollywood. Yeah, literally, it never took the sign off the front of it. It was called Aquatech, and no one knew that it was.
You were off the 118.
Yes, off the
I- I-
118,
I- I
exactly.
was there
And you
many
never
times, yeah.
left.
That's right. Huh?
You never left. I mean, you were always, never went on location.
Never went on location. It was one of the cheapest shows to make, yet the best written one on television. So, as far as I'm concerned, and I thought we had some marvelous, marvelous actors. It was the finest material I ever got to do because it was very challenging stuff. Very, and as you know, when I first got on it, we had to introduce this character, and I just looked at it like it's the military. He's this young starship captain. He's commanding that, but suddenly he gets orders to basically command an aircraft carrier group, a full group with the aircraft carrier and all the ships associated with their support and the air support and everything. And that's what you do. You pick up and you have to go, right, in the military. So, and that's the way I looked at it. It wasn't replacing Michael. No one could replace Michael O'Hare. He was a dear man. He was a brave man. He came back after being let go. I'm too shallow a human being. I would have been pissed off and told them all to go to hell. But he did. He came back with tremendous humility, professionalism, and he and I, for that short time of making that two-parter, hit it off just terrifically. Jerry Doyle, God bless his soul, they didn't get along very well, but they managed to put it aside, the past, and I thought Michael went out with tremendous dignity in that.
Yeah, what a terrific arc you had. I mean, to go from, like you said, this dutiful soldier who's on assignment to the point where now you're fighting Earth, you're a rebel, you're,
Oh my God.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
I
terrific.
mean, I was constantly under some kind of duress, and I earned this white hair. Yeah. But, you know, the material to me as an actor, it didn't matter how expensive the sets were. We ran on about an $800,000 budget, and I think Star Trek was like close to $2 million an episode or something like that. At least that's what I heard. If I'm wrong,
Pretty close. Yeah.
Pretty close. But there were two different tones to these shows. And don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing Trek. It was a bright, optimistic look, bright and colored. Ours was dark and shadowy hallways and shadowy characters, you know. And it was a different time. And it's like Joe said in one of somebody's speeches, maybe it was mine, I'm not sure, it's all run together over the years. But wherever human beings go, we tend to drag our baggage with us. And for good or ill, you know, it's still with us. And Roddenberry's vision of the future was always going, not stationary in this sort of Fort Apache in outer space and putting up with all this stuff and trying to maintain peace and order.
Star Trek is what we aspire to be. Babylon 5 is what we are.
Yes.
Particularly these days.
It wasn't a clean thing as much as we tried. And and that character, I got to do, you know, I got to go from A to Z. I mean, truly, from a younger man to, even though he wasn't ancient old, he'd aged a lot because he'd given up 20 years of his life to Lorien to finish his mission. And that was a sad day because we actually shot that at the end, that episode, Sleeping in Light. See, I do remember, once in a while. You know, that we shot that at the last episode of the 4th season because we had all received word that we were canceled. And there's a very famous picture I've signed many, many times, a large photograph of all of us up against the wall of one of the on our old factory walls, all of us flipping off the camera, you know. That was to go to our Warner Brothers and everybody, but then TNT came and saved the day, you know. And then we started doing those TV movies. I think there were a couple of really good ones. In fact, Martin Sheen was in one of them, who's going to be one of our guests. Yes, he had a third eye in the middle of his head. It was really well done. And this was before he became the president. Right. Just before, in fact, when West Wing hit so big, you know.
You give him a few pointers because, of course, you played the president many times. Most recently on the Orville, but you've many TV movies and series. Where
yes, a couple of times, even lower budget than. Yeah, I actually went through COVID before everybody did. It was a thing called pandemic, and Los Angeles, California, got hit with a terrible plague, and the governor was Faye Dunaway, and who's Julia? What's his name? Roberts.
Oh,
Eric Roberts was the mayor of Los Angeles. Wow. What a science fiction story that was. I got to tell you, but two larger-than-life characters in there themselves. And yeah, but I mean, speaking of the Orville, I think it got real short shrift. I think Seth MacFarlane is a genius, a comic genius certainly, and we did this during COVID. I was in a 3.5-hour makeup job. I called myself, I was the only blue man of my race left, I think. And I'm the President Al-Kuzan. And I'm the president of, not the Interstellar Alliance, I was president of that in another life. I was president of the Planetary Union, okay? That was the Screen Actors Guild in 400 years from now. But I was in this tremendous blue head, and the whole reason I went to read for the part, for the people that cast Seth's shows, and he was on camera. He was watching me on camera. And I came dressed as a president, you know, with a suit and tie, and I even put an American flag pin on. I did the whole works. And then in the middle of my audition, I hear a voice. It's Seth MacFarlane, and he says, you know, I was thinking, Bruce, that the character, I'm going to make him into an alien race, an alien character. What do you think about that? I said, just tell me when to show up. That was it. And really, the reason why is I thought of Andreas Katsoulis. And I want to pay homage to a wonderful man, a wonderful actor, who playing Ambassador Jakar was more comfortable. Andreas was more comfortable in that skin than in his own. I don't think people really know that about the man. He was a tremendously shy man. And when he played that character, he literally came through all that plastic and all that gum and whatever they put on him, and you know, those beady red eyes I had to stare into until Londo took one of his eyes or something when he was held prisoner, and he would have preferred to stay in there. I mean, I still see him sitting out in Sunland there where we were shooting, and we'd, you know, at 110 on the tarmac there at the parking lot, and he's sitting out there in that whole suit and getup having a cigarette. It was so incongruous, but he was perfectly happy in that thing. He would have probably never wanted to take the makeup off. But I thought of him and I thought, my God, if they can do it, I'm doing it for just a very short time, you know. They did it for years, he and my dear, you know, Delenn, all of those guys, Peter, all of them who had to play the alien races, they'd have to come in at 4:30 in the morning, some of them, for the day's shoot. And I'd come bouncing in to be camera ready by 7 o'clock, about 6:45. It was great, being a human then.
It's so sad because you've mentioned so many names of people we've lost, and young too. I mean, Richard, Jerry,
Mira. How about Mira? I don't know that it's well known, but people thought maybe she died during COVID. She died during COVID, but it was West Nile virus they did her. And I was in Vancouver, British Columbia, in a 14-day quarantine in a hotel. And Peter Jurecic called me late one night. My wife and I were there. I could do time in prison now. I know what, I did 2 quarantines, and I know I can do it standing up, okay? I hear some guy trying to grasp with his voice, trying to pull it together, and Peter, and I said, we don't talk a lot on the phone. I've known him since 1970-something, you know, but he said the only thing came out of his mouth is, we lost Mira. And immediately was it COVID? And he said no. And none of it was publicly known. But she was merely having a barbecue in their backyard, outside in the fresh air. And the Los Angeles area happens to be one of the epicenters of West Nile virus, believe it or not. And she got bit, and apparently she was in a coma for 5 months. I never knew it. Only 2 other people from, I think, Babylon 5 knew about it. And her husband just didn't want it known. And I think he took her back to former Yugoslavia. Oh. I'm not sure, but that sent me to my knees. And then Jerry, who and I, in our post-Babylon 5 days, we were absolutely best friends. He was like my ne'er-do-well younger brother. I never had a brother, but Jerry Doyle filled that space, and I was constantly telling him when he was a screw-up. He was Garibaldi. That role was written. There was he was the guy. And all JMS had to do was sit out in the parking lot at lunchtime and listen to him go into tirades. And by God, 2 weeks later, you saw Garibaldi saying those same words. He was brilliant in that way. He really had a feel for his actors. And as we came on and as it started going more of us were in those characters. Mira, you know, I mean, we all are very concerned about Ukraine and Russia right now, but there was a war going on in the 90s in that same part of the world where they were butchering each other by the thousands and having concentration camps. It was the Serbs and the Croats, the war in Croatia. And Mira had fled that. She was a major television star in her home country. Her husband, Goran, they were sort of a Romeo and Juliet. I think they were from opposite sides. They had no friends. They fled, actually, with their lives in danger. Once they were a traitor, and once they were a hero. So I think JMS created Delenn, Ambassador Delenn, and some of her most impassioned monologues she was feeling the angst of what was going on in her homeland, you know, and brought that forth. That's his genius. You know, he knew his actress, and he knew what could bring her so that she could draw upon, that an actor does, your own life's experiences. And that parking lot in the back of our studio, our hot tub factory, we had many, many impassioned debates and discussions. Jason Carter and I probably refought the American Revolution a dozen times a week. I was a blasted Yank, and I called him a limey bastard. So, I mean, is that... Anyway, but we loved doing it. It was just jousting. That's all it was. It was fun.
It is still so beloved by so many people that it's remembered well. I want to bounce back in time a little bit to another show that you and Peter Jurassic were in. A little movie called TRON. I believe you're the main title character, aren't you?
It says so on my back.
That's right.
Yeah, right. It does, yeah.
We were talking a little backstage about what a pioneering effort that was.
Yeah.
By Steve Lisberger.
Stephen Lisberger, yeah.
The team that he brought together to sort of
Harrison Ellenshaw, Richard Taylor, and
yeah, absolutely.
all these animators.
An amazing creation from something that had never been done before.
Exactly, and it was a big risk. And it's only in the last few years we've been talking about it, and after we did Legacy, it was not a sure thing. Yeah. I understand. As I told you back there, and it's nothing against Disney today, they're such an amazing company they have become. They rule the world. I mean, but at that time they were at a very low ebb. The son-in-law, Ron Miller, was running it. And from everything I ever heard, he was running it right into the ground. No major star would work on the Disney lot. They were out of touch with the changing times that were going on. And I don't know the full story, but Lisberger's told about it. I mean, he shopped that thing around. He came out from Boston. He had a commercial outfit or something like that, but he got this thing, something Neutron.
Yeah.
And he had this figure of a guy standing there.
They'd done this thing for the 1976 Olympics.
Yes.
The Laugh Olympics.
Yes.
That they had a big animated production.
Yeah.
And they got a groundswell of work doing station IDs for radio stations across the country.
Exactly.
And they created this character, this backlit, glowing character for all these radio stations.
Yeah, yeah. But finally, just shortly, he came out to Hollywood and did what even George Lucas did in every major filmmaker. Yeah. Shopped it around the studios. They didn't know what to think of it, I guess, and they didn't want it. And I have to say, I'm a child of I was born in 1950, so I remember the wonderful world of Disney. It was something I never missed. Davy Crockett was my very first hero, and then there was Zorro, and then there was all these magnificent characters on television that just piqued my childhood imagination. And so Disney was that magic world out there in California. I was going to go there one day. I was. So I got to live that dream and achieve it. So when you think of animation, you're really thinking of Disney. Walt Disney with that little mouse figure, that little Mickey Mouse changed the world. And so it was a natural place to take to experiment. Yeah. But in our business, financial people don't quite understand what experiment means. It's a sure thing. They want their money back too, and then some. So they took the chance on doing this movie. I don't have all the details anymore, but Stephen Lisberger got to do it, and he assembled that magnificent team we talked about. And Jeff Bridges. Now, I was doing a TV Western movie of the week out in Tucson, Arizona. The first time I read the script, I was sitting on a horse out there waiting for action. And come ahead, Bruce. Everybody, come ahead. Rolling cameras. And I'm sitting there and I'm thumbing through this script I've got. And obviously there was no cell phone, internet, or anything like that, so I had to wait to get back to the hotel that night to give they were interested in me. It was the same casting people that I'd done How the West Was Won. Okay, this was post How the West Was Won. So Pam Palafroni. and she was going to be casting this movie at Disney. And so I'm up for it. They want to meet with me, which was pretty thrilling because didn't have to audition. And so it was a quick thing, and I'm reading this script, and I'm sitting there going, what in the hell is this thing? What the TRON? What's a RAM? What language is this in? Oh, well.
Come on, get a clue.
And I shoved it in the saddlebag, and I left it there. Some wrangler has a vintage, original TRON script that was in his saddlebag, and he looked at it and said, well, some good toilet paper. Anyway, but no, you know what I mean? Yeah. But and I got back to the hotel that night, and I said, so I'll be there, and I've got 5 days left, and we'll get back to L.A., and sure, I want to meet with him. Yeah, I do. It was Disney. It was a feature film, for God's sake. I'm piddling in television here, and then I found out Jeff Bridges was on board. Now, I worked with his father on a 4-parter on How the West Was Won, Lloyd. Yeah. And Lloyd kept saying, you remind me of my son Jeff all the time. And I said, I really admire your son's work, because Jeff was doing some incredible movies back then, from the Last Picture Show to, oh my God.
Yeah, China Syndrome.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he was doing big pictures, so you always kind of admire those people in your age group that you're looking at him going, I wish I had that role. Anyway, so he was on board, and this was real now. And so I went and met with Don Kushner and Steven Lisberger, and they showed me these cells that they had shot already. And I had gone up for Star Wars, and I saw these cells, and it kind of looked like space, okay? You're in all this gear and the helmet and everything, so I was immediately enthusiastic, thinking this was going to be the next Star Wars, and the rest is history. But it changed everything. Yeah. And we had such anticipation for it. I got to look over here more, too. Hi. I'm not just a profile, okay? Anyway, and then the film kind of came out with all this expectation. Within the industry, it was highly anticipated because this thing, they wanted to see this CG. What was this all about? Yeah. Okay, and it was going to turn, there were all these houses, all these CG places ready to go. There was going to be this new, and then we kind of went out of the box. And, well, we're backing off from that, okay?
It was a tough start.
It was a tough start.
It was a start.
But it was a start.
Yeah.
Think of that summer. I think there's a list of the all-time impactful science fiction movies were in the summer of 1983? 82.
Mark did a documentary about it.
Really?
Yeah. Greatest geek year ever. Blade Runner, Star Trek II, TRON.
I mean, it's quite
E.T.
amazing. Yeah, Last Starfighter, right?
And you came out on
E.T.
the-
And I used to say, and that damned alien sucked the oxygen out of the entire summer. We all came in number 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever to E.T. phone home. TRON, I'd have taken his head off with a disc. I'm telling you. At 50 yards, I could have cut his head clean off.
We tried
I was
to
dangerous
have
with
we
that
tried to have a frisbee out here for you this
buddy,
evening.
They wouldn't insure us for it.
Yeah.
I could tell you stories about learning to throw that thing. I was
Oh my
lethal by
gosh.
the end of TRON.
I'll bet.
I could turn that thing. I could make it do a side. It could start off this way and end up this way.
Now, I got to work on TRON Legacy for a couple months when we were still in L.A.
Yeah.
And this was way at the beginning, and they had one of the first versions of the scripts. They had just made a trailer that was a proof of concept.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Is that the one that they sort of sneaked out at San Diego Comic-Con
That's
in
the
Hall
one.
H?
Yes, that's the one.
Hall H is where everything is announced. The studios go there. It's got 1,000 people or more.
And I was brought on the show the week before that happened.
Okay. That was what greenlit it. I heard was the
Pretty
kind of
much.
the
Yeah,
reaction when
pretty
the
much.
crowd went
Because they got
nuts.
really serious after that
Yeah,
weekend.
yeah.
The script, I had just read the script, and I was in the craft service room getting some coffee, and Joe Kosinski, the director, came
Yes.
in, and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing okay. I just read the script. I'm confused about something."
Uh-oh.
He said, "What?" "You have a script called TRON Legacy." Well, it was called TRON 2 at the time.
TRON 2, yeah.
But there's no TRON in it.
Only in one flashback sequence.
Yeah. And
Tiny
and he
one.
said, "Yeah, we're trying to fix that." But it was truly amazing, and the result was way better than we deserved.
Yeah. Did you know there was a third one that it was supposed to go about, I can't remember how many years ago now, when it came out in we made it in 09,
Yeah,
and
and it
it
was
came
like-
out in 10, didn't it,
Yeah, yeah.
2010? And there was a third script Kaczynski had done.
Right.
By the way, when I was so impressed with him, he was a true fanboy.
Absolutely.
He had that Bally arcade game was his personal
Yeah.
one. That was the doorway to Flynn's laboratory, and we shot all that up in British Columbia in Vancouver, and but he had he came out of not engineering, he was an
architecture.
architect. So he built these massive practical sets. We had a lot of CG, but that Solar Sailor looked like an aircraft carrier inside of a gigantic
One of his projects
warehouse.
was a complete CG recreation
Of the town.
of the set from The Shining.
Yes.
That looked absolutely
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
he had the eye and he had the drive.
Yeah. And then Mr. Tom Cruise was so impressed with Legacy that, because he was at our premiere in Hollywood, he snuck in. Tom Cruise had to sneak into our premiere.
Yeah.
But did he run there?
And he wasn't in a tuxedo. He was like in a T-shirt, a bomber jacket, and jeans. But who knew that Maverick was going to come out of that and help save the movie industry when we were in our darkest hour with COVID? You know, nobody was showing up. The movie theaters were dying. And, yeah, this, you know what? I loved Legacy. I didn't mind. No, I didn't get to. I got to play Tron in an animated version of it. In that, I didn't mind that. Believe me, just being a part of it was enough. And they called me, Sean Bailey and Joe Kaczynski called me on a dual call and asked if I would like
But
to
the
join.
scenes that you were in
Well-
had the most feels in the whole movie.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
I got to do a little more with Alan Bradley that I didn't get to do in the
Yeah.
original one. I was kind of a snot nose in the original one. He was like this computer geek.
Yeah.
They were geeks then. Now everybody has a computer, so he wasn't so special anymore.
Kind of makes you wonder why, why Flynn programmed Tron to look exactly like him. What's happening with that? Flynn? I mean, if somebody had told you in 1982 after the movie came out that how many years later you'd be walking back onto a set and playing that character again?
That was the thrill of it. I mean, it was like somebody pinch me. Am I sleeping? And this is all a dream. I remember one night in Vancouver, it was on the weekend. It was the weekend I happened to be up there because I would go back and forth to L.A. and doing those sequences. And Jeff and I and Lloyd Catlett, his sidekick that he has known ever since the last picture show. Lloyd was his stunt double. He did everything for Jeff, and just a buddy, but also he worked for him. And we're walking down the street past all these people in Canada, and nobody knew anything. We were having the laugh time of we went into a restaurant. Of course, we didn't have to pay. It was great hanging with the dude, I want to tell you. Yeah, he does abide,
We have time for
Just a few questions,
If
Yeah,
you
by
come
God.
up to the
let's-
microphone.
Are you still awake out there?
Come
I
on,
can't see
Scarecrow and
you.
Mrs. King fans.
Come on.
Show the flag.
Show the flag, my friend.
Welcome to Richmond GalaxyCon, Bruce.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you here. I want to take you back to some of your early work you did.
Oh, boy.
Back to your Western.
Yeah.
I want to ask one particular thing.
Yeah.
When you worked with Kenny Rogers in The Gambler, can you share a unique story of how it was building on a set and working on a set? Did you actually sing any songs with him or anything, on and off?
Did you know when to show him and when to hold him?
Yeah.
I
When to
learned.
walk away,
When
when
to
to
walk
run.
away.
I learned, yes. First of all, let me say one of the great gentlemen of our world, Kenny, never saw a man enjoy his justified success more and shared it with everybody. The Gambler movies were just nothing but having a fun time for maybe 2 months in some of the prettiest parts of the country in the West. And I was immersed through his association to the world of country music, and been a fan ever since. But Dolly Parton, I still feel that when she walked up, you are just cute as a peach. She grabbed me by the cheek.
Nice.
Oh my God, I was in love. I was her peach forever. And you know, and Reba, I mean, just everybody, all those wonderful women that he did those famous duets with, Islands in the Stream, and all those great songs. But Kenny never said he was an actor. He never said he was a singer. He said, I may not have the greatest range in voice, but I damn sure can tell a story. And that's how he did it. His story songs were probably his most popular song. Gambler being, actually Johnny Cash had done a version of it just prior, and but it was Kenny's phrasing and that husky voice that did it. And then he was always trying to push it, trying to reach higher registers too, with Islands in the Stream and so on and so forth. But those movies, he was the boss. He was writing the checks. And CBS was more than happy to have him. And we had wonderful guest stars. And I got to play his sidekick. I got to do the opposite of what the old traditional Western movies were, the B movies. I was the tall, young guy. Normally, the tall, young guy was the hero of the story, and the grizzly old sidekick with the beard. Sidekicks. Anyway, my sidekick's here.
Yeah. Call me Gabby.
That's right, Gabby Hayes. There must have been 100 buffalo out there, Roy. He never had a tooth in his mouth. And we would laugh about that. You know, he would say, "You're right, you're right." You know, and we had a lot of great expectations. I ended up leaving that franchise. I would do Scarecrow and Mrs. King during the fall and everything, and then spring on the hiatus. I did a Gambler movie for like 3 years or more in a row, and they were always two-parters. They were 4 hours. I mean, it was 2 nights, you know.
And they were huge. They
were
did so
huge
well.
ratings.
Yeah.
And he would have a new song out. I remember we were doing pictures for Time magazine. Kenny was going to be on the front of Time. He had come out of the I could go on forever here, fellas. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm sorry if you don't mind hearing.
But
You might not even be a Kenny Rogers fan in the whole thing here. Are there any fans?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's a few. Yeah.
Kenny, that year that we were doing the original Gambler, he was put on the front of Time magazine as this phenomena because he had gone through, his original band was sort of a kind of country acid rock band called Kenny Rogers and the First Edition.
Right.
I just dropped in to see what my condition was in.
That's right.
Okay. And he, big Vegas performer too, even before that with that band. They had gone through a brutal legal battles and breakup that cost him a great deal. And I saw him originally selling guitar lessons on Z Channel.
Wow.
the Z Channel.
On a commercial.
Yeah.
He went from that to hitting with, he had the Coward of the County. No, Reba, don't take your,
Ruby,
don't take your love to town. Remember Ruby? And then the Gambler. And then when we were taking these pictures, #1 in the nation, both charts, Billboard, in pop culture and in country, was Coward of the County.
Right.
And he had been one of those first crossover guys that could cross back and forth with the same kind of popularity, if not more, increased. He had such a large, and he was making like something like 15 million a week or something. This was 1982 money.
Not bad. When that was real money.
That was real money. And, but never, he was not somebody that, he wore it all on his sleeve. He had the biggest heart, and he took care of a lot of people. And I miss him greatly because I would have still been hanging out with him. Yeah. We did those movies. He never said he was an actor, and he was smart. As I said, he had that personality as you saw come across the screen. It's called charisma, and it's something that can't be learned. There are no acting lessons that you can go to a school to learn these things. It just happened to be that love affair that the camera has on certain human beings. And he was smart enough to be Kenny Rogers out there and Like old Ben Johnson said about himself, the cowboy actor, I'm the best Ben Johnson. Well, he was the best Kenny Rogers around, okay? So he could play Kenny Rogers like no one else.
Thanks so much for your question.
Let's try and get through the next
Thank you.
couple.
I'm talking a lot. I've had two
No, but-
coffees in a row. Oh my
That's
God.
great.
Hi, Bruce. My name is Aaron, and welcome to Richmond.
Thank you.
So I'm a huge fan of the Tron films. So I remember seeing Tron Legacy in IMAX 3D because that was the best way to see the film.
Yeah.
My question for you is, seeing Tron, who was a good guy in the first film, become Rensler. How did you feel about that when you found out that Tron was going to be Rensler?
I am glad you asked that. When I read it, I was confused. No, I really was confused. What are we saying here? What do we mean by this? And of course, Clue and that whole thing. But I got used to it. I got used to it, and but at first I didn't agree with it, but I wasn't going to tell them that. Okay, so I thought it was handled well. What upsets me is that in the final moments of the film, Tron was coming back to life. He was starting to turn, the blue circuitry was happening as he was falling and falling, going down, down, down. And then, of course, I got to loop in the lines, I fight for the users, my line. That was my line, not Rensler's line. So that means old Tron was coming to life again. So there was hope, and obviously in the third one, we were going to carry on from that, I think. Hell, we had Sam out there in the real world with the user world, and we had this, computer
She was a
character.
construct, yeah.
Yes, on hanging on there. Wanted to see what a sunrise was like, right?
Super impressed by Vancouver. It was crazy.
Right, super impressed by Vancouver, that's for sure. Pardon me. And so that's what I thought it was going to be, this transformation, and then I was happy about it. I thought for sure we'd do that, and we obviously didn't. So, but I think that's what it was implying. So.
Thanks so much.
But I have to say, I was the guy that was playing Rensler was about 5'4".
So kind of my height, really.
I can't see you that well because of the lights, but I would never, But I'm not insulting anyone. But we just wouldn't match. I was a lot more leg than he was, and okay. But he did that Brazilian. What is it called?
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Basically, yeah, that's what it is, and it was phenomenal to watch how he did all that stuff. But couldn't they gotten a guy a little lankier? That I'd have been. But anyway,
Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I tell you real quick? I screen tested everybody on that show, that movie, other than Jeff, and but I screen tested with.
Cindy?
Well,
On the sequel or the original?
no, the sequel.
Oh, okay.
They hired me in November. We wouldn't start shooting until April, I believe it was, April or May or something like that. And in November, I did all the screen tests. I did that opening scene with the young Sam Flynn's. And all the way to, what's his name's little brother, who's a wonderful actor. Every young actor wanted, if he was young enough, some of them were lying about their age too. They were well over 35. And I did that scene probably 50 times.
Wow.
For screen tests. It was interesting. And then Quora, we watched that scene, and Steven Lisberger and I were watching, who did him again? Sam.
Yeah, Sam.
Garrett Hedlund. Sorry,
Garrett Hedlund,
thank you.
yeah.
I've lost his name. Memory's going. And we were sitting there watching together as they were doing up on the oh God, what was it? What's his name? He says to him, "You're really hurting my vibe here," or whatever it is, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But they're just getting to know each other. I'm the Solar Sailor.
Right.
Okay. And what's that?
You're messing with my Zen here, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think he made that line up. I swear to God, it's so Jeff Bridges. I'm telling you, the dude abides, man. But but they were doing that scene where we're sitting below them, watching them do it, and I said, "Those are the two. Those are the two." Garrett is underrated in that.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. You can disagree with me.
He's doing a thankless job in that movie.
Yeah, he was doing a thankless job, and he looked like he could have been Jeff's son. He had the physicality because that's stuff he had to do, and he had to do a lot of it just like we had to when we were his age. And I think he got short shrift there. I think he did an excellent job, and I helped put him there.
We hate to mess with your zen,
Yes.
but we're out of time.
But the good news
What's
is
a quick one? Come on.
Bruce will be at his booth the rest of the
Yes, I can answer.
convention.
Please come by. I'm going to go right after.
I am Bruce Boxleitner. I've come to freeze you. Oh no, that's not.
No, that's
Fish, but I
Box.
didn't-
No, that's
Oh, that's Box.
That's-
He wasn't
that's
he wasn't in
Box. He
Logan's
wasn't
Run.
in
Bruce
protein
Boxleitner.
from the sea.
Yeah, it's funny
Plankton.
because
Sea greens.
It's in protein.
I love that he was in that Tales from the Gold Monkey. I love that.
No, he wasn't in Tales from the Gold Monkey.
No, he was in Bring Back
Bring Him
Alive.
Back
He was
Alive.
Bring Back. Stephen Collins
right.
was in Tales from the Gold
Yes.
Monkey.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I know. Bring It Back Alive was the better show.
But you tried to gaslight us into believing it was Tales of the Brass Monkey, which it
Right.
absolutely
Which it was at the
not.
beginning. And they changed
Was it?
before it aired. Yes, it was.
The Beastie Boys. That was the Beastie Boys.
Beastie Boys, yeah,
documentary.
the Brass Monkey, that
Tales of
funky
Brass
monkey
Brass,
junkie. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but Bring It Back Alive was a Bruce Boxleitner show. It was interesting to hear him talk about that, actually.
I
because-
loved it, and you know he just dove in and he talked about it with no qualms whatsoever.
Well, that was the originally Dante's Peak versus Volcano.
That's right. That's right.
Except it was Bring It Back Alive versus Tales from the Gold Monkey.
It was Raiders of the Lost Audience.
That's really funny. And I wonder, it's exciting. There's going to be a new Tron movie. Did you see the trailer for the new Tron movie?
I did.
Yeah, that looks crazy, dude. It's that's fairly wacky, but it'll be interesting to see if that works.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I kind of dug it, and
Yeah. The Nine Inch
I
Nails soundtrack.
I like the idea of now this time the Tron they're coming to our world rather than going into the computer.
Yeah.
It looked like Independence Day with Tron,
Yeah.
and
Tron
I don't know.
Tron Independence Day.
So I don't know. I'm excited. Also, I like the fact that it's coming out in October. So it's not trying to be a big summer movie. It's trying to be a programmer, which is great. That's the kind of movie I want to see in October.
Yeah, I agree.
I just don't think we need Jared Leto Atreides in everything.
No, none of us like Jared Leto. That's the only thing. I'm not a fan of his.
Yeah. That's the black mark on its soul, but still.
I guess we're not going to
because-
have him on the Treksperts.
Well, he hasn't done Star Trek, and that Suicide Squad
Neither
Joker
has
was
Bruce
just
Boxleitner.
terrible. Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's Star Trek adjacent.
Jason.
Yeah, were you a Babylon 5 fan, Darren?
Not at all.
Really? Okay. What about you? Actually, you were, because you used to go on the interwebs and talk about it with your friends.
No. I was
No,
part
no.
of the flame wars of the 90s on Usenet, arguing about it with the idiots who would say things like, "Oh, they stole it from J. Michael Straczynski," one of whom is J. Michael Straczynski, who later, I actually found to be a pretty nice guy when I.
He is a nice guy. I really like Joe.
But yeah, like no. It just I always found Babylon 5 to be kind of a slog.
Really? So I'm the only one who's a Babylon 5 fan here.
Yep.
Wow. I like Babylon 5, especially when it was good. I
Although
mean, that whole Shadow War arc and the stuff on Mars, and it
To
was.
be honest, I really respect the technical side of Babylon 5. They brought in cinema quality visual effects to a TV show, and Ron Thornton and Mojo and the people at Foundation Imaging really did an amazing.
That's
job
true. That's
of
fair.
basically changing the ground rules of what you could do on TV. So
Well, my feeling. It's like I'm not a big fan of like this auteurist TV in a sense. So it was kind of like I love. It had the same problem where people weren't going to talk back to George Lucas at a certain point. Like Rick McCallum. And the problem with Straczynski is he didn't really have anybody like a network giving him notes, and didn't have anybody pushing back. So he could do things like not have any ADR, not ADR, any looping,
Foley.
or post sound
No looping,
effects or
yeah.
Foley, and his sense of humor is so strange that I that often I found a little off-putting. But I just thought, he's somebody who loves science fiction, who had a big sci-fi swing, and that's where the 26 episode season did them no favors, because there were usually like 10 really good episodes a season, but there
Yep.
were also 10 really bad episodes. So and when the arc kicked in, it was like Deep Space Nine. When the arc kicked in, it really started to rock. So
To be fair, I've been a fan of Joe Straczynski for a long time, ever since Hour 25.
yeah, he was great on Hour 25.
That was a radio show that he did in Los Angeles area for many years.
It's what we do, except it was on the radio instead of a podcast.
Right.
Because there were no podcasts.
There were no pods.
or cats.
One of my
Or cats.
favorite things ever was the interview he did with Harlan Ellison about
Yeah.
the Star Lost on Hour 25. I adore that. In fact, Mitch, who was with us and my college roommate, he still talks about that. Because I think I sent him the cassette. This is how long ago it was.
Wow.
And or we listened to it on a trip somewhere up to when we're driving, just loves that thing. So, and he still talks about it like all these years later. So clearly it resonated. But yeah, we love Bruce. He's going to be coming back for some more shows with the GalaxyCon folks, thankfully. And I hope we have the chance to sit down with him again and do an even
all
deeper
Scarecrow
dive.
and Mrs. King interview.
Yeah, that's right.
Which,
all we're
by
gonna
the
talk
way,
about.
probably could have done.
Yeah.
Probably. But he's done a lot. He's somebody I'd love to work with at some point.
For
you
sure.
know?
Yeah.
I'd love to work with him. I think he'd be easy to work, and he still looks great. He definitely he's been in the
aged
business for a
well.
long time, but he hasn't aged like some people have.
He would make
Yeah.
a good starship captain.
He would. Or an admiral.
He would. No, he would. He was good in the Orville. I mean, that was a funny story he told about the Orville. And it's great. That's the thing I do like about Seth MacFarlane, in that he does value like all these people who've been in sci-fi in the past, and tries to pay homage to it. So anyway, but yeah, so hopefully this won't be the last time we sit down with Bruce, but we are going to be sitting down with some great people in some upcoming Galaxy Cons. We'll be Treksperting over to New Orleans on July 17th to 13th, and then we'll be Daren's going to be down in Raleigh July 24th to 27th. Ashley's going to be in San Jose August 15th and 17th, and we'll be in Des Moines September 12th to the 14th. You want to find out more about the guests and what we'll be doing, go to galaxycon.com, galaxy.com for all the exciting information. And of course,
Many
if you're
such
interested
journeys are possible.
in finding out more about our, God damn it! Ever since I got this, if you're interested
Those
in
of you
finding
listening at
out,
home, Mark's having a little trouble with his camera.
Mark just clipped into the back rooms. He'll be right back.
well, it's so fun. I mean, I used to have this really beautiful monitor that had it built into the monitor, the camera. I didn't have to do anything. Gorgeous Apple monitor. But it's like when it finally died after I don't know how many years. I didn't want to spend thousands of dollars on a new monitor, so I just got a monitor and an external camera, and it just never stays where it's supposed to. It's really sad.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? What you
Get
going
a
to do
different
when they come for you?
monitor.
Of course, if you want to find out about the latest and greatest on our Star Trek Las Vegas, curating 4 days at the Star Trek Las Vegas convention, August 7th to the 10th, go to creationend.com for more details about that. And anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please rate and review us today, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can subscribe on Spotify at TrekspertsPlus.com, where you get access to bonus episodes, early commercial-free drops of episodes, and more. Inglorious Treksperts, production of the Treksperts Podcast Network. Mark A. Altman, DAREN DOCHTERMAN, Ashley Miller, our executive producers, Peter Holmstrom, Brian Mixer, producers. Mark Rivera is our amazing audio sound mixer. And our show is copyright 2025 by Treksperts Plus. And you can listen wherever podcasts are available, or you can now watch on video via Spotify and on YouTube. And of course,
Like,
join the
comment, subscribe.
that. And you can join the conversation over on our Discord channel, which there's a link in the show notes. So that about wraps it up for this week. But that was another great show, and a great time in Richmond. Some great meals, great filet mignon at Perry's. Some great. What'd you have at the Havana 59? Havana. What'd you have, Darren? I don't remember.
Well,
You got something.
I had the Cubano, the Cuban sandwich.
Oh, right.
Always
That's
great.
right. Yeah, that was Compollo.
Yes. That's chicken and rice for you English speakers.
I did. It was good. It was good.
Ooh,
we had good
it's
meals.
Real good, Andy. Real good.
Yep. So anyway, but thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next Thursday with an all-new episode. So until then, as we say here on the show, on the
C'est la vie.
podcast, The name of the pod is Inglorious Treksperts. We'll be back, so keep on trekking, ingloriously, of course. Shh.